On February 19th, Pope Leo XIV gathered his priests from the Diocese of Rome behind closed doors and delivered a message that had nothing to do with theology and everything to do with the central crisis of our time. He told them to stop writing sermons with ChatGPT. Like all muscles in the body, if we do not use them, if we do not move them, they die, the Pope said. The brain needs to be used, so our intelligence must also be exercised a little so as not to lose this capacity. Then he drew a line that should haunt every manufacturing executive in America. To give a homily is to share faith, he said. An AI will never be able to share faith. I run a factory. I'm not a priest. But I recognize that line immediately because I've been trying to draw the same one on shop floors for 36 years. The Pope's metaphor is physiological, and it's exactly right. A muscle that isn't loaded doesn't just rest, it wastes. Sarcopenia doesn't require injury, it only requires disuse. The same thing happens to intelligence on a production line. When a frontline operator stops being asked to diagnose a problem because the system now flags it automatically. The diagnostic muscle doesn't wait patiently for its next rep, it atrophies. When a supervisor stops building the judgment to read a crew's body language, mood, and readiness because an algorithm now assigns tasks, that perceptual capacity doesn't just hibernate, it dies. I've seen this firsthand. During my time at Mercedes in Germany, I was at the plant in Rastatt where prior to the Weisse, which is where the vehicles get polished, they set up a brilliant image processing system with cameras, software, pattern recognition on their paint line for the A class that scans every body before it comes into the Weisse, identifies paint defects invisible to the naked eye, and spits out tiny little markers on the exact spot for polishers downstream to fix. It's a magnificent piece of technology. But over months, the polishers who once found the defects themselves, who ran their fingers across a fender and knew by touch that something was wrong, a different kind of orange peel, they stopped looking. They waited for the screen, they trusted the marker, and when the system missed something it wasn't trained on, a new defect pattern, an unusual paint batch, there was no one left with the hands or the eyes to catch it. So a homily is not information delivery. If it were, ChatGPT could do it beautifully. But a homily is a relational act. The priest stands before people whose marriages are fracturing, whose children are sick, whose faith is threadbare. And he speaks into that specific, unrepeatable human moment. The words matter less than the fact that a person who knows this congregation, who has sat at their bedsides and blessed their dead, is the one saying them. In manufacturing, the equivalent is a supervisor who walks a struggling operator through a quality problem not by pulling up a standard work document, but by reading the frustration in the operator's hands and knowing that today the real problem isn't technique, it's confidence. It's a plant manager who overrides a scheduling algorithm because she knows from years of accumulated embodied judgment that this particular crew on this particular night can't absorb that particular model changeover. No algorithm was trained on that. No chatbot carries that knowledge. On the very same day that Pope Leo told his priests to put down the chatbot, the Vatican announced a new AI powered translation system that will render liturgical text into 60 languages in real time. Same institution, same week, opposite directions on AI. You might say it's hypocrisy. I'll say not even close. It's precision. You see, translation is a task, a homily is a relationship. The Vatican is making exactly the distinction that most corporations refuse to make. AI is a magnificent tool for extending human reach and a catastrophic replacement for human judgment. Manufacturing needs this distinction tattooed on, I'm just going to say, every boardroom wall. Use AI to extend visibility across supply chains, to accelerate data retrieval, to handle the mechanical burden of scheduling and sequencing. But do not use AI to replace the moments where leaders develop other leaders, where supervisors build operators, where human intelligence compounds through practice and relationship. The first is leverage, the second is atrophy. So I know something about this distinction, not from business school, but from childhood. I grew up in Dhanbad, in the coalfields of eastern India. My school was called Denobli School, and as a boy, I knew the name only as a name. It was years before I understood whose name it was. Roberto di Nobili was an Italian Jesuit of noble birth who arrived in southern India in 1605. He was sent to Madurai, that's where my wife is from, the cultural heart of Tamil Nadu, where Portuguese missionaries had spent decades failing to win converts. Their method was simple and disastrous. They preached in Portuguese, dressed in European cassocks, and demanded that converts abandon every trace of Indian culture. The high caste Hindus of Madurai regarded them as foreign barbarians. De Nobly did something radical. He learned Tamil, one of the oldest living languages in the world, maybe even the oldest. He didn't just learn enough to get by, he mastered it. He wrote catechisms and philosophical discourses in Tamil and is credited today as one of the fathers of modern Tamil prose. He adopted the saffron robes and vegetarian discipline of a sannyasi. He studied the Vedas so thoroughly that he could engage Brahmin scholars in their own philosophical tradition. The Portuguese Archbishop of Goa condemned him. The controversy dragged on for years before Pope Gregory XV ruled in de Nobli's favor in 1623, affirming that the gospel must be translated not just linguistically, but culturally. I think about de Nobili every time I walk a production floor. What's a plant manager doing when she spends her first 6 months learning the rhythms of a crew? Their shorthand, their frustrations, their unspoken signals for when a line is about to go down. She is learning Tamil. De Nobili did not invent this method, he inherited it from a man who had been broken upon. I speak of Ignatius of Loyola, who founded the Jesuit order that sent de Nobili to India, was a vain soldier whose leg was shattered by cannonball at Pamplona in 1521. During months of agonizing recovery, he emerged as the architect of the most formidable leadership development enterprise the world has ever seen. The Jesuits did not spread across the globe because Ignatius gave them a script. They spread because he gave them a method, a structured practice designed to develop judgment, discernment, and the capacity to adapt to whatever they encountered. The Nobili in Madurai was its product. So, in ways I did not fully understand until much later, I was a boy in a Jesuit school in the coalfields of Dhanbad. People ask me why I call my framework the Bloom system. They assume it's a branding choice. It's not. When I was 10 years old, two men from two different spiritual traditions looked at me and saw something I could not yet see in myself. One was a Hindu sage walking in a lineage of Shankaracharyas stretching back 1,200 years. The other was a Jesuit priest from Chicago who had traveled halfway around the world to teach at a school named for the Nobly. Different faiths, different continents, different centuries of tradition. But they used the same word. They both said to my mom when they saw me that they saw a light. Me? No, my mother understood what they meant. I was 10. I just wanted to go out and play field hockey. But something lodged. And over 36 years of walking production floors in Flint, Stuttgart, Chennai, Tuscaloosa, Lansing, that word kept surfacing. Not in the light they saw in me, the light I began to see in others. In the team leaders who kept chaos from becoming catastrophe. In the operators who made judgment calls 100 times a shift that no procedure manual could capture, in the people whose intelligence and dignity were being systematically ignored by systems that saw them only as costs to be minimized. A bloom needs three things: mud to root in, safe ground where intelligence takes hold, water to rise through, steady nourishment that lifts capability upward, sun to open into, intense exposure that triggers the actual flowering. Miss anyone, and the bud rots. The Pope used the word faith. I use the word capability. But we're pointing at the same thing: the irreducible human substance that only develops through presence, relationship, and the willingness to be changed by the encounter. The Pope went further. He warned his priests about the illusion on the internet, on TikTok, the confusion of followers and likes with authentic spiritual connection. Every plant manager I know lives inside the manufacturing equivalent of this illusion. We call them dashboards. OEE numbers, scrap rates, cycle times, uptime percentages. These metrics glow on screens in conference rooms, and they create the warm feeling that we understand what's happening on the floor. But a dashboard is to operational reality what a TikTok following is to a parish. A flattering abstraction that feels like connection, but it is not. Real operational intelligence lives in the callous judgment of the woman running line 3 who can hear, literally hear, when the extruder is running 2 degrees hot. It lives in the crew lead who knows that the Monday's first shift after a holiday weekend requires a different conversation than Tuesday's second shift after a strong run. It lives in relationships built through presence, not pixels. Your dashboard is not your parish. Your algorithm is not your homily. Your people are waiting for you to show up. The Catholic Church has survived the printing press, the Reformation, the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, 2 world wars, television, the internet, the latest noise, and social media. It's the oldest continuously operating institution in Western civilization. When an institution with that kind of track record looks at a new technology and says, yes, but not for this, that verdict carries weight. The Vatican is not anti technology. It just announced a 60 language AI translation system. But it knows from 2 millennia of hard experience that certain acts are constitutionally human. Delegation of those acts is not efficiency, it is self destruction. You can automate the task, but you cannot automate the transformation. The act of doing it is what builds the capacity to do it again. The Pope is right. And his message isn't just for priests. Thank you.